Today we will be discussing the CoAlt Science and Social Studies Administration Training for DACs. The agenda for today's training include the important dates, activities before testing. This will cover chain of custody, test security, the annual training, and Pearson Access Next training. Activities during testing, administering the assessment, testing procedures, and examples of administering the Science and Social Studies CoAlt assessment. Activities after testing, which include online score entry, status reports, and returning materials. In addition, we will offer you some support references to utilize during this administration. The CoAlt Science and Social Studies assessments are fast approaching. Here we have a list of some of the important dates for the CoAlt Science and Social Studies assessments. The first date is the Student Registration Personal Needs Profile Update window for participation counts that were used to fulfill initial orders. Pearson received an initial registration file from CDE and loaded it into Pearson Access Next. Districts were then responsible for confirming CoAlt participation counts between January 11th and January 29th, 2016. Pearson extracted a new SRP&P file on March 1st to account for enrollment changes made in Pearson Access Next during February, so materials will be received for newly registered students as well. Districts will receive materials on March 28th based on the participation counts as of March 1st. If new students are registered for the CoAlt assessment after March 1st, you will need to place an additional order in order to receive materials for those students. You can start ordering additional materials on March 29th. The additional order window for secure materials will close on April 29th. The window for non-secure materials is open a bit longer until May 2nd to allow for the ordering of return shipping labels. The administration window is from April 11th through April 29th. Please note you will have an additional 3 business days after the close of the administration window to enter CoAlt scores. All CoAlt scores must be entered by Wednesday, May the 4th. Districts will need to schedule the pickup of materials with UPS. All CoAlt materials are considered non-scoreable since the scores are entered in Pearson Access Next locally by the test examiner. The deadline for arranging material pickup is May 2nd. All CoAlt materials must be picked up no later than May 4th. The next several slides we will cover district responsibilities that need to be completed before testing begins. All CoAlt testing materials are secure before, during, and after the test administration. A written district and school chain of custody is required. Each person in the chain is responsible for test security while the assessment is in their possession. Secure storage. CoAlt test examiners must account for and return test materials in individualized accommodations to the school assessment coordinator for storage in a secure and locked location immediately after administration, at least on a daily basis. Test materials must not be stored in classrooms. Test examiners must not leave testing materials unattended before, during, or after testing. The school assessment coordinator distributes the materials to the test examiners. The school assessment coordinator is responsible for distribution of test materials to CoAlt test examiners and for the collection of the test materials during the preparations or accommodations as well as on each day of testing. The SAC will have test examiners sign the CoAlt materials out and back in once they are returned. Only materials for individual student who is being assessed should be distributed to the test examiner. The test examiner needs to have access to students' materials prior to the test administration in order to prepare and organize the provided student materials and test manipulatives. It is important to remind your staff during training that the CoAlt is a secure assessment. Security for the assessment should be as rigorous as the assessment for general education students. Due to the nature of the assessments, test examiners have direct interaction with the test items. Test examiners need to remember that items and student responses are not to be reproduced in any way, including discussing them with colleagues, writing notes on what to include in future lesson plans for students, etc. Please remember no digital cameras, video cameras, or recording devices of any types are allowed in the testing environment. The testing environment is discussed on page 46 of the procedures manual. Again, just as in other statewide assessments, the CoAlt must be given in a separate testing environment. One of the test examiner's responsibilities during the administration is to provide the student the best opportunity to show what he or she knows. The test examiner's focus is to be on the student and the assessment. Thus, there must not be anything or anyone in the testing environment that would distract either the test examiner or the student. Phones should be turned on silent or vibrate while in the test environment. Test examiners should not answer the phone during the assessment. Other staff members should not enter and exit the testing environment during test administration. Test examiners may not monitor other students while administering the assessment to a student. It is the district and school's responsibility to ensure test examiners have what they need to provide the assessment in a quiet, non-disruptive location. It should be a rare instance where there is anyone in the testing environment in addition to the test examiner and the student. Should an additional staff member be needed in the testing room, at a minimum they must be trained on test security and sign the security agreement confidentiality form. On page 36 of the procedures manual, it is discussed about who can be a test examiner. The CoAlt Science and Social Studies Administration requires judgment calls at the time of the administration. Thus, the assessment is given by a test examiner, not a test proctor. This distinction in terminology is important. A test examiner must be a district employee who is a licensed professional. Test examiners may be special educators, general educators, speech-language pathologists, or school psychologists. Paraeducators who hold a valid teaching license may administer the assessment. A substitute teaching license does not meet the criteria for administering this assessment. The test examiner should be a person who is familiar to the student but may not be a relative. All test examiners must be trained annually for the current administration year. This slide indicates what should be included in the annual CoAlt Science and Social Studies training. Based on feedback, CoAlt test examiners were unaware of the released items and other available materials to help them prepare to administer the assessment. It is important to share the links released to the released items and the CoAlt Examiner's Manual. These are available on the CDE website at the links on this slide. You need to cover the communication protocol for your district. Who do the test examiners contact with questions on how to administer the assessment or if they need assistance? Remind CoAlt test examiners about test security and the procedures that must be in place to ensure a standardized test administration for all students. Finally, a review refresh of how to give the items must be included. It is the district's responsibility to ensure all CoAlt test examiners are not only comfortable and confident with the following testing protocol, but they are doing it correctly. This cannot be done without an opportunity to observe test examiners practicing administering items. Trainings are to provide test examiners with an opportunity to practice administering released items and to receive immediate feedback. It is important to correct test examiners when they are not following the procedures. Trainings must also provide test examiners with the opportunity to ask questions and receive answers. Managing Pearson Access Next, creating a test examiner. DACs and SACs can create test examiner accounts through the user interface, UI, or through the user file import-export process. The next few slides will walk you through this process. First of all, you will need to sign into Pearson Access Next and select the CoAlt administration. Once within the in Pearson Access Next, under the CoAlt administration, select Setup and then Users. Select Create Edit Users from the task drop-down and select Start. Complete the necessary fields for the new user on the detail screen. In the Selected Roles field, select Test Examiner from the list of available roles. Select Create. Once the green Success Changes Saved message appears at the top of the screen, the new account has been created. Select the Exit Task button. If the test examiner role needs to be added to an existing Pearson Access Next account, the following steps should then be taken. Access the CoAlt Science and Social Studies administration. Select Setup Users. Use the Find User search box to locate the account and select the checkbox next to the username. Select Create Edit Users from the task dropdown and Start. Select the username from the list of users. Select the white space next to the existing roles in the Selected Roles box. A list of available roles will appear. Select Test Examiner. Select the Save button. Once the green Success Changes Saved message appears at the top of the screen, the account has been updated. Select the Exit Task button. The CoAlt Pearson Access Next guidance document, which includes step-by-step screenshots of this process, is found on the CDE training web page, Avaset, and in Pearson Access Next support. Managing Pearson Access Next. Create update account through a user file import export. Directions for creating or update user accounts through the file import export process are found in the Pearson Access Next online user guide at the following link. To create a new test examiner account or add the test examiner role to an existing account, test examiner should be entered in column G in the user file. Assigning a test examiner to a student. Before the test examiner can enter the student score into Pearson Access Next, the DAC or SAC needs to assign the test examiner to the student test. To do so, they will need to select the CoAlt Science and Social Studies Spring Administration. Select the student's test under Testing. To locate the students, select Show All Results under the Search button, and then select the checkbox in line with the student's name. Additional students can also be selected at the time if a test examiner needs assigned to multiple students. Select Assign Users to Student Test and then select the Start button. Enter the test examiner's name in the Authorized User box in line with the student's name. If a single test examiner will be assigned to multiple students and the students were selected in the previous step, the Authorized Users box at the top of the screen can be used instead to assign that user to multiple students at once. Select the Save button and then select Exit Task once the green Success Changes Saved message appears. On page 87 of the Procedures Manual discusses receiving and distributing materials. Before testing, DACs will distribute CoAlt materials to schools. This must be completed in a timely manner so test examiners have access to review the testing procedures and to prepare task manipulatives and accommodative materials. Upon request, DACs may distribute the PDF version of the task manipulatives. Administering the CoAlt Science and Social Studies assessment. The student is presented with 3 or 4 answer options. Students will work with item until the correct answer is received or the maximum attempts is reached. CoAlt test examiners may not reword prompts. Represent prompt at level 4 only when the student does not respond. An additional prompt is included to engage the student at level 3. Only one data point is recorded. And the pages of the CoAlt test booklets are oriented so that the test examiner administers the test while facing the student. The test booklet includes scripted text for the test examiner to read aloud to the students. There are 2 different types of items: selected response and supported performance task. We will show examples of both item types, and how to administer each. After the examiner is finished giving the student the CoAlt assessment, the test examiner will need to enter the student scores into Pearson Access. It is recommended that the student scores be entered on the same day the assessment is administered. Remember that for spring 2016, score entry must be completed by Wednesday, May 4th. Each student must be assessed with their own test booklet and corresponding task manipulatives. The task manipulatives are shrink wrapped together with the test book. It is important to keep the test materials that were shrink wrapped together. In grades 4, 5, and 7, there is one test form per grade level. In grade 8 and high school, there are two forms, Form 016 and Form 026. You need to ensure the appropriate form will need to be indicated on the score entry form in Pearson Access Next. It is important that the form number indicated on the score entry screen matches the form number on the test booklet. Task manipulatives are shrink wrapped with each test booklet, must be used with that specific test book. Keep test materials together. Each CoAlt test kit contains a test booklet with form number on the front, task manipulatives, score entry form with task manipulatives, and a secure return envelope. Task manipulatives will need to be cut apart before administering the assessment. The cut apart task manipulatives must be returned to Pearson in this envelope. There is one envelope per student. The test examiner needs to write the student's full name on the cover of the test booklet and the secure return envelope. There is a secure envelope in each CoAlt test kit. When you are training your schools, please make sure they understand that each secure envelope needs to be sent back with the cut apart task manipulatives inside. At the end of the administration, we see a lot of the secure envelopes missing. The examiner will also need to cut apart the task manipulatives prior to the assessment. They can then be paper clipped to the corresponding student response pages and stored in the secure return envelope to avoid losing any pieces. It is okay if someone other than the test examiner cuts apart the task manipulatives, but they need to be a district employee and have signed the security agreement form. If task manipulatives are adapted for an individual student, these must be kept with the test booklet. A PDF version of the test items are available from the DAC if needed. For each student, the test examiner will need to use the picture symbols that are provided, except when the student needs to use objects or pictures of real objects, or if the student has a personal lexicon with specific representation for the concept or words in the answer choices, and in that case, all the answer choices must be from the student's personal lexicon. As previously mentioned, there are two item types for this assessment. Selected response items are identified as item number and the layout in the test booklet. This item type contains both a primary prompt and an additional prompt. To score this type of item, you need to follow the rubric. The next slide shows a diagram that will help explain the scoring as well. So through this workflow, you can see that you present the primary prompt. If the student does respond and they respond correctly, the student receives 4 points. If the student does not respond, repeat the primary prompt and the student responds correctly, they will still receive a score point of 4. If you present the primary prompt and the student responds incorrectly or student does not respond after repeating the primary prompt, present the additional prompt and then present the primary prompt again. If the student responds correctly, they will receive a score point of 3. If the student responds incorrectly or the student does not respond, present the correct answer and then present the primary prompt again. If the student responds correctly, they will receive a score point of 2. If the student responds incorrectly, they will get 1 point. However, if the student does not respond, they will get an NR, non-response. The second item type is supported performance task. These are identified as a task number in the layout and test booklet. They have 3 prompts, and the students will use the task manipulatives that the test examiner has cut apart. The student will receive a 2, 1, or no response NR on the supported performance task items. Here's a diagram that shows how to score the supported performance task. You present the task, present the prompt. If the student responds correctly, they receive 2 points. If the student responds incorrectly, they receive 1 point. If you present the prompt and the student does not respond, you'll present the prompt again. If the student responds correctly, they get 2 points. If the student responds incorrectly, they will receive 1 point. If the student does not respond, they will receive an NR. After testing, the next several slides we will cover tasks that need to occur after testing. After the examiner has given the student the assessment, they need to enter the student's scores into Pearson Access Next in order for the student to receive a score. Remember that it is best practice for test examiners to enter scores the same day the student took the assessment, and then all scores must be entered by the end of day on May 4th. You will need to sign into Pearson Access and select the CoAlt administration. Select the appropriate organization. Select Testing and Student Test. Locate the student by typing the student's last name into the search box. As an alternative, you can select the search drop-down and show all results. Select the checkbox next to the student's name. If you're entering scores for more than one student, you can select them by checking. You can select all by checking the box to each student's name. Select Score Alternate Student Test, then the Start button. Select the student's name on the left side of the screen using the drop-down. Select the proper form number and save. Test examiners will enter the student's IEP accommodation information on the left. Accommodations that were used on the assessment are entered on the right. The test examiner enters the student's scores for each item. Test examiners must then click Save. A checkmark Successfully Saved message displays in the green bar. After confirmation is received, select Exit Task. As the DAC or SAC, you will have access to school level reports to see the progress of each school's CoAlt assessment. There are 2 types of reports that are available. Summary reports, which contain student test status counts by test grade across the district or school, and status reports, which contains student test status by individual student across the district or school. These reports can be displayed through the UI or downloaded as CSV files. For verification of score entry, select the CoAlt administration. Select Reports and Score Entry Reports. The Score Entry Report screen will appear based on the selected organization. The report options will be either district or school level, as shown in the 2 windows here. Select Display Report or download CSV for the summary report. Verify student test status counts by test grade in the Not Started or In Progress and Completed columns. Select Display or download CSV for the status report. Verify individual test status in the status column. For the return of materials, which is referenced in page 94 of the Procedures Manual, DACs or SACs must verify that all task manipulatives and used score recording forms have been placed in the secure return envelope. There should be one envelope per student. Score entry must be verified in Pearson Access Next. DACs or SACs must also check that the envelope includes a signed and dated security agreement form. After the materials, score entry, and security agreement forms have been verified, DACs or SACs must seal the secure return envelope. Materials must be returned immediately. Schools return materials to districts once the last student has tested. DACs return materials to Pearson once all scores have been entered and the last school has tested. Since all scores are entered into Pearson Access Next, all CoAlt materials are non-scorable, so the blue return label should be used. Refer to the procedures manual for additional information on preparing materials for return to Pearson. This last page contains some information about where you can get some additional information as it relates to the CoAlt Science and Social Studies Administration. There's a support page that's available on Pearson Access Next. There's toll-free phone support at 1-888-687-4759, and you can also email for support at clhelp@support.pearson.com. Student personally identifiable information, including names and SACES, must not be emailed. Thank you for attending this training.